Hey, welcome to Half the Battle.
I'm gonna be honest, guys, main character May was a lot of fun, but it did wipe me out. So this week, we're gonna have a short, fun little video on how Hasbro reused names between their Transformers and G.I. Joe toy lines.
I'm sure all of you are aware of one or two, but it may surprise you to learn that there are a lot. And I mean a lot.
So to keep this short and easy, I'm gonna restrict the list to the original G.I. Joe toy line and Transformers Generation 1 and 2. Those more or less occupy the same time frame anyway. We'll start with the most famous ones, and by that I mean the most famous Transformers.
Because none of the G.I. Joe main character names were ever reused in the Transformers line.
Which makes sense, considering those are people called Duke, Cobra Commander, or the Baroness, none of which would make good giant robot names. The only one that could work is Destro, but they didn't reuse that one. Anyway, first up is Shockwave. Everybody knows the Guardian of Cybertron, but a lot fewer people know the G.I. Joe SWAT Specialist and Choir Boy.
No, really.
Apart from a vaguely similar color scheme, they have nothing in common. Like with most of these, the name reuse was to keep the copyright in-house at Hasbro. Next, and equally famous, is Blaster, the Autobot boombox and their answer to Soundwave. His namesake is the G.I. Joe Battle Force 2000 hovercraft driver.
Again, far less known.
Also, this is the most expensive picture I've ever taken because that boombox only came in a huge San Diego Comic-Con exclusive set.
Now, this isn't to say that there aren't any G.I. Joes that are more famous than their namesakes from Transformers.
Take this next one for example. Mainframe, the Joe's computer specialist known from the cartoon. And his namesake is a walking talking computer that was an action master. The bot is also a programmer, meaning this is the first time both characters have something in common besides their name. Someone who's definitely more known than their robot counterpart is Roadblock, the Joe's chef, heavy machine gunner, and sometimes Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. In fact, honestly, I didn't know there was a Transformer named after him, let alone two, before looking it up. And I bet you didn't know either, unless you're a die-hard Transformers fan.
In which case, hi there, I talk mostly about G.I. Joe. I hope you enjoyed the show, and tip your waitress.
Yeah, he was a Decepticon Ultra Pretender and a Generation 2 Auto-Roller. Transformers could get weird, okay?
The next three is where the Transformers are the most well-known, and there isn't really much to say about the G.I. Joe versions.
They are Mirage, who could turn invisible, and a Mega Marine Joe that looks like the 90s threw up on him. Gears, who was in the cartoon, but the Joe is only famous for being a really rare toy. And Blastoff, who was a Combaticon and also a Mega Marine. See my comments on Mirage on that one.
The next batch is where the Joe figures are slightly more known than the bots.
You have Outback, the survival expert, and the Autobot who's, I don't know, Australian somehow? Grand Slam, one of the original 1982 toys, the Jetpack Trooper, with his namesake being a mini cassette that turned into a tank. But let's face it, everybody remembers Soundwave's buddies, far less people care about blasters. And then there's Scoop, the Joe combat photographer, with a target master that turns into a construction vehicle. Lastly for this batch is Road Pig, the dreadnought heavy hitter and all-around dumbest one of the lot, who's a Generation 2 motorcycle. I've never seen that toy in person, so I don't know if it's in scale, but I'd love to see Road Pig riding Road Pig. The next 7...
Yes, 7!
I told you Hasbro did this a lot, are characters that I'd say are equally obscure in both the G.I. Joe and Transformers toy lines. There's Skydive, an aerial bot and Sky Patrol member, so they do have something in common. Airwave, another Sky Patrol member that was both the jet and the airport set he came with. And Cloudburst, a Joe that came with a real working glider and an Autobot Pretender.
Well, that's the flyers out of the way.
So here's Countdown, who's a buggy that shares his name with the huge rocket base he came with, and a G.I. Joe astronaut. There's Barricade, who looks like a Power Ranger reject, and a Micromaster racing car. Yes, I know the name is far more famous for the movie Decepticon, but like I said at the start, I'm keeping this list restricted to G1 and G2 for brevity's sake.
As well as my own sanity.
Next, there's another cassette, Overkill, and a robot, so they have that in common. That was the leader of the Battle Android Troopers. Then there's Crankcase, the Ostriker driver who's famous for dying horribly in the comic, and the Decepticon Triggercon who's most famous for appearing on this list.
The last of the 7, and the penultimate one on this list, is a bit of a special one.
Overlord. He was a Japanese exclusive and later a Europe and Australian exclusive Power Master. Okay, so precisely because of that he's become very famous, but at the time this made him the most obscure character out there. The G.I.Joe version is a Cobra Commander wannabe that never went anywhere. That's not the most disappointing result of names being reused though.
No, for that, I saved the best, or I should say the worst, for last.
Meet Devastator. This was the most intimidating, awesome robot of the early Transformers toys. He looked amazing, and when an Autobot saw the Constructicons form this monster, they would lubricate themselves. As a kid, he looked amazing and holds up to this day. Now meet Cobra's Devastator.
Do I really need to say anything here?
It looks like a toy cart kids could ride around in at a county fair. I've seen Nerf guns that are more intimidating. And this gets the name of one of the most terrifying Decepticons in early G1?
For shame.
Well, at least there's good news for all of you Transformers fans who stumbled onto this video. The Action Master Devastator is no longer the dumbest toy named that. Your long nightmare is over. This thing has it beat. And that was the list of about 20 names used in both G.I.Joe and Transformers. There were a lot more than I had thought.
Well, I'll see you next time, everybody. And hey, why not like, share, and subscribe if that's your thing?
Transformers, more than meets the eye. Autobots waste their power.